Greetings, this is the Dan, and this is a 1936 through 1938 Grunow Teledial 1291, chassis model number 12B. It is a 12-tube AM broadcast plus 2 shortwave bands radio. I purchased this radio from a gentleman in Wisconsin for $40 on Facebook Marketplace. He said that he had recently also purchased it from a different gentleman for $100, who the intent was to restore it but did not for some reason or another. The gentleman I bought it from was moving out of his house and needed to be rid of this one, so here it is now. This radio is my first radio that I've worked on, analog radio with vacuum tubes. It's kind of neat. It has this tuning mechanism that's very similar to a rotary telephone, where if you wanted to tune into a station, you would press the preset, rotate the dial until it stops, like it did here, let go, and then you would be listening to KOIL. There's also a note on the Radio Museum website that I'm reading from here that Shirley Temple apparently promoted this radio in reference to her motion picture The Bowery Princess of 1936. So we don't know if this works. We're going to power it up with the Variac. We're going to see what happens. If it does work, we'll move on to checking out the electrical components and replacing them so that they can be used on a regular basis. And if not, we will be troubleshooting it to try and get it working, figure out why it wasn't working and why the previous few gentlemen did not restore it. But before we turn this thing on, we're going to familiarize ourselves with the schematic, the condition of the components underneath, and try to see if there's anything that would make sense to fix before attempting to turn this on. So doing a walk of the tubes that are in this radio, we've got a 5Z3, which is being used for the power rectifier. We've got a 6A8, working as the audio detection and oscillator. We've got a 6J7, which is functioning as the AFC. We've got a couple 6K7s handling the various IF components. We've got a couple 6C5s working as audio drivers. We've got a pair of 6F6s being used for the audio output powers. And finally, we have a 6H6 functioning as the detection, AVC, AFC amplifier. And I believe if I remember watching Lord Shango 66's videos, I think he says these go bad a lot. And so I guess we'll see if that is indeed the case or not. Taking a look at the chassis from the top point of view, man, check out this banana slicer. I mean, holy cow. That thing means business. Thankfully, it seems to be in pretty good shape. The rest of the tubes they don't seem to be open to air. I don't see any like white residue on any of them. The interesting thing about this set is it has interesting to me is it has these metal tubes, which I haven't really experienced yet. I've seen them in various other YouTube videos, but they're the first I've seen them. I don't know why they are metal. Maybe it's to block interference from the other components. I'm not sure, but they are interesting nonetheless. The power transformer looks to be in good shape. It doesn't smell melty. It doesn't look melty, but it's also one of those that doesn't really leak. It's kind of sandwiched in there, so it appears to be of pretty high quality. Just another note, this little guy here, the 6H6, is the one that I believe Shango says always goes bad. I remember watching a video of his where he had a little stubby guy like that, and he said that these will take a huge burst of energy when the machine is powered on, and that causes them to fail. I don't. I only think of that because it's a little nubby, and um, I don't know if it's actually the tube that he was talking about in his video or not, but um, we'll have to see. Taking a look at the underside of the radio chassis, things down here actually look pretty good and essentially all original. I can't see any components in here that would lead me to believe that this radio has ever been serviced, which is odd since all the tubes have been replaced. So I find it unlikely that this radio made it enough to burn out all the tubes without ever being serviced. Um, just taking a look at some of the components in here, we've got a whole bunch of these wax capacitors. Um, these guys over here look a little crusty. Maybe they're a bit of a problem. The only thing that does kind of stand out as maybe it was serviced is this domino guy up here. I don't know if that was original or not. Um, but if that's all this thing ever got for service, then that's actually pretty amazing. Okay, so we've got a couple of the lights off, so hopefully it's a little darker and we might be able to catch a glimpse of some of these tubes glowing. But I guess we'll see. So we've got the Varicam up in the top right here, so we can see the voltages and the watts coming through it as we move throughout the range here. So let's get started. We'll make our way up to like 50 so that the kilowatt turns on. Okay, there's the kilowatt. Move that into, oops, into watts. Okay, so you've got no watts. Kind of see me down here. This is the power switch, so we're gonna turn that on. So there we've got. Oh wow! Actually, it did surge a little bit. Maybe it hasn't been powered on. Huh? Yeah, so we're at like 30 some. Well, this thing's supposed to be 100 and some watts at the end of the day. So actually, that bursted pretty good. So we'll move up here to like 70-ish or so. Yeah, it's definitely, it may not have ever been turned on. Certainly acting as if it was never turned on. Voltage capacitors are really sucking it down here. That seems to be kind of stable. Okay, we'll move up to around 80 volts here. Again, it's turning on and then kind of backing down a bit, so we'll let it stabilize here for a second. Okay. I don't see any filaments glowing yet. Oh, no, I do see one. One of the C5s is glowing. So things are getting power, and I also see that the dial has lit up. So the dial is this thing is definitely taking juice. Let's move up to 90 volts, 30 some watts. We're still nowhere near the 100 it should be. Keep cranking, 100 volts here. 41, 40 watts. Now, oh yeah, some of these filaments are definitely glowing now. Let me see if I pull the light out here, if you can see it on the camera at all. Oh yeah, you can see one filament on the camera. You can also see the dial has illuminated a little bit with the light off there. But we'll put that back on so we can keep moving. So now we are at 39 watts at 100 volts. Let's go to 110. I don't hear the transformer melting down yet, which is good. I think you can even see the filament voltage on the camera now. Or the filament's lighting up. So, I mean, we're at 110 volts though, so this thing should be making some dang noise. Although I suppose maybe the volume's down. I should probably turn the volume up, huh? 51 watts. Yeah, I just turned the volume all the way up, and I can't hear anything. If I adjust this, it doesn't do anything. So it's not alive enough to be making any noise. 50 watts is pretty low. Let's do the rest of it. Let's get zoomed in here for the 120 volt guy. Yeah, 55 watts at 100 and basically 120 volts. Yeah, something's not running here. The dial is definitely lit up though. That's pretty neat. Kill the lights again. Check out what we can see on the camera without the lights. Yeah, you can still just see that one on the camera. I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 filaments lit up. Pretty bright too. So they all seem to be just fine. At least things are getting power, but we're not seeing a lot of watts for some reason. And definitely no sound. I don't know what any of these buttons do, but they do not cause that speaker to make any noise. I just love this dial. I mean, it's got such a cool look to it. Although, like I was saying, it only one light appears to be on. It seems like, yeah, rotating it doesn't turn the other one on. Yeah, it seems like the bottom light is not on. I mean, I can kind of see it a little better. I can still see the bottom part of the dial in person, but yeah, it seems weird that they'd have so much light up top and none on the bottom. Since we have no sound, we don't know if the IF is working or not. But since we have no sound, the speaker should still make scratches even if the rest of the stuff isn't working, I think. So I think where you would go is you would test these output tubes, which I suppose if they're bad, I mean they should still be making some sound. Those are probably fine. There's these discriminators, which maybe they're not working. Along with this audio driver that maybe is bad. I suppose if it's not driving any audio, it's not going to make any noise. And then, finally there's this 6H6, which if that's bad, then I suppose everything downstream would also be bad. let's check out this schematic and see if that 6H6 is upstream. So I will be the first to admit that I don't fully understand how to read these schematics. I've watched Tango go through his 100 times, but now that I'm doing it myself, it's a little more complicated than it is when you're just watching it. So one of the things I'm going to assume about how this schematic works is that things generally flow from left to right, pretty much because you've got the speaker on the right and all the IF and tuning stuff is on the left. And so, under that assumption, we'll assume that, this part of the schematic having to do with the tuning isn't really required to make the speaker work. Like, I just want to know if my speaker is good or bad. Right now, I have no idea. So, assumingly, signal comes in, IF, AFC comes in here and mucks about with it, and then it makes its way to this 6H6. Now, how I understand reading these tubes is that the inputs come into the middle here, where these squigglies are, and the outputs are on the ends, which makes sense except for, on our 6H6 that we're only looking at because I watched a video on one being bad. We've definitely got an input coming here, but we've got the output also coming here. So clearly I don't fully understand how inputs and outputs on these tubes work. But if you were to ignore my extremely limited understanding of how these work, the only thing that's moving its way to the right is this lead coming out here. So maybe this goes up through here and down through there. Who knows? But if we follow that, that's coming out through here. It's going up into this 65 here, coming out to this 65. It's traveling along here. This is a 6F6. It's not labeled, but it is. These are the two 6F6s here. And then it finally makes its way out into the speaker plug, which then makes its way down to the speaker. So, like I said, I don't think we need any of this to find out if the speaker is good or bad, which is the current objective. Okay, so we're going to be using the Mighty Mite 7 to test the tubes I've been talking about testing. I've pulled them all here. If any of them are bad, I will show it. If they are good, I will not. I will skip that. So let's find, we'll start off with the 6H6. Well, that one's bad. That's good news. All right, well, we'll move on. 6H6. All right. Yeah, 6H6. Totally bad. We've got a 6C5. Probably can't see. Crazy. Totally dead. So we ended up with these two being bad, impressively bad, and the rest being questionable to weak. So I'll pop all those other ones back in, and we will replace the two that we found are bad. Okay, so I actually went back and looked at the footage and put the tubes back in the spots they were. The two that are missing are the two that were found to be entirely dead. They were these guys. 100% nobody home. So let's pop some new old stock guys in here. I tested these two, so these are indeed new old stock. This one is the clear bulb version. Also, like, now that it's in there, it's way bigger. Huh. Interesting. And then we have our replacement 686 undescript box. Also tested to make sure that that was fine. So what I'm expecting now is, because they were in those metal cans, I couldn't see if they were even, their filaments were even lining up or anything. So now we are plugged into the ISO tap up here, and because we don't really need the variac anymore. And we are going to, I would expect to see more watts being drawn. If nothing else, hopefully it works. That'd be cool. But if it doesn't work, I would expect to at least see more than we saw before. So let's get our ISO tap on. Get that in frame. $70. Nothing. Full volume and nothing. Well, then my theory of those tubes being responsible for making at least some noise appears to be not a thing. Okay, so I went back and looked at the other footage for where we brought it up on the variac, and it didn't gain a single watt, which really confuses me. I don't understand how a tube being completely dead like that would draw the same current as one that's full strength. That really doesn't make any sense to me. The only thing that makes any sense, I guess, for someone like myself, skills to do at this point, is just to go upstream and assume that something else is wrong up ahead. And it's easy to test the rest of the tubes, and we got this guy and these guys and that guy. They could be bad too. I would just have expected them to not be necessary to make noise. Okay, so we've pulled the rest of the untested tubes here. We're just going to test these in no particular order. We should be all set up already. It's looking okay. Although load test is failing. Questionable. This tube is questionable. It is on its way out. It's probably not the problem, though. Unlikely to be the problem. Well, maybe throw a new one in there anyways. Just for funsies. But unfortunately, this tester can't do the last tube I need to test, so I need to go get a different tester. Alright, so for this last 5Z3, we need to pull out the Precision Model 1012. This thing's an absolute monster. But I love the way it looks. This is not solid state like the last one was, so who knows? Also mega good. So this tube's fine. Okay, so we pretty much found out that all the other tubes were okay. There was one that was questionable. I've put all the ones that tested okay back in. I am going to, just for a shot in the dark, replace that one, just in case. Just in case, just in case. And we will fire this up and see if that made any difference. So no difference. Still no sound. So much for tube swapping. Yeah, didn't get anything. 57 watts. No change. Okay, well that's probably enough content for this first video. What did we learn? We learned that it powers on. These front switch, power switch works great, which is nice because I've had projects like this where even the dang power switch doesn't work. We learned that the power transformer is in good shape. It did not melt into a pile of cheese, and I did not hear it arcing or doing any nasty things, so that's a huge relief. We learned that there were two very, very dead tubes. Replacing those had no effect on the wattage. The primary problem with the radio is that it seems to have no sound. There's either something wrong with the speaker or there's something wrong with the chassis. Given how low the wattage is, I would expect that the speaker's not the problem and there's something wrong on the chassis. We learned there appears to be something going on with this dial. It's not as bright as it should be on the bottom. Maybe that's how it's supposed to be, but it doesn't seem like it should be. It would be pretty disappointing if you bought this new and it looks so disproportionately bright on one side versus the other. But other than that, we're going to have to seriously buckle down and do some troubleshooting. We did not get lucky just randomly replacing tubes. So on the next one, we're going to have to really dig into this and start doing some tests to find any troublesome components that would give us the problems we're having. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.